She stood frozen at the register, her hands trembling as she clutched the pharmacy bag, containing her daughter's insulin. The words echoed in her mind like a cruel mantra. Declined, declined, declined. Behind her, the line grew longer, impatient sighs filling the sterile air. Rachel's cheeks burned with shame as she fumbled through her wallet one more time, knowing there was no other card to try. No miracle waiting between the worn leather folds. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your card has been declined," the pharmacist repeated, her voice professional but not unkind. Rachel's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not in front of all these strangers. Not when her 6-year-old daughter was waiting at home, her blood sugar already dangerously high. Could you try it one more time?" Rachel's voice cracked despite her best efforts. She knew it was pointless. The account was empty. She'd checked it 3 times that morning, watching the negative numbers mock her from the screen of her cracked phone. The unexpected car repair had drained everything. She'd thought she could make it to Friday, to payday, but Emma's insulin couldn't wait. The pharmacist's sympathetic eyes said everything. She swiped the card again. The machine beeped its rejection like a tiny judge passing sentence. Rachel felt her knees weaken. $247. That's all she needed. Such a small amount to mean the difference between life and death for her little girl. "Ma'am, I'm afraid—" "I understand." Rachel's voice was barely a whisper. She stepped back from the counter, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. She could call her sister in Portland, but she was struggling too. Her parents were gone. Her ex-husband was 3 months behind on child support. There was nobody. Can I come back later today? Maybe by this evening?" Rachel heard the desperation in her own voice and hated it. Hated how life had reduced her to begging for time to save her daughter. She'd worked 2 jobs since the divorce, had done everything right, and still here she was, defeated by a number on a screen. The pharmacist opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, a voice cut through the tension. "Try mine." Rachel turned. Behind her stood a woman who looked to be in her 70s, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that held something. Rachel couldn't quite name, understanding maybe, or recognition. The woman was already extending her credit card toward the register. "No," Rachel said immediately, shaking her head. "No, I couldn't." "You can, and you will." The older woman's voice was gentle but firm. She stepped forward, her movement slow but purposeful, and placed her card on the counter. "Please," she said, looking directly at Rachel. "Let me do this. But you don't even know me. It's almost $250. Rachel's voice broke on the number. "I can't accept. I don't need to know you." The woman's eyes softened. "I know what it's like to stand where you're standing. I know what it means to choose between medicine and rent, between dignity and survival. And I know what it's like to have someone extend a hand when you're drowning." The pharmacist looked between them, uncertain. Rachel felt the tears she'd been holding back finally spill over. "I'll pay you back. I promise. I get paid on Friday and I can—" "No." The older woman placed a weathered hand on Rachel's arm. "This isn't a loan. It's a gift. Or better yet, it's a promise that you'll do the same for someone else when you can. That's how we survive this world, by holding each other up when one of us stumbles." Rachel couldn't speak. Her throat was too tight, her heart too full. She nodded, tears streaming down her face as the pharmacist processed the payment. The machine chirped its approval, such a different sound than the rejection beep. The pharmacist slid the bag across the counter, and Rachel clutched it to her chest like the precious cargo it was. "Thank you," Rachel managed to whisper. "Thank you so much. I don't even know your name." "Margaret," the woman said with a smile. "And yours?" "Rachel. And this," she held up the bag, "this is for my daughter, Emma. She's 6. She has type 1 diabetes. And without this—" Rachel couldn't finish the sentence. Margaret's eyes glistened. "Then I'm especially glad I was here today. How is Emma?" As they walked out of the pharmacy together, Rachel found herself talking, really talking, for the first time in months. She told Margaret about Emma's diagnosis 2 years ago, about the divorce that followed shortly after, about her ex-husband who couldn't handle having a sick child. She spoke about the job she worked, the bills that never stopped coming, the constant fear that she wouldn't be enough. Margaret listened, truly listened, without judgment or advice. When Rachel finally ran out of words, Margaret shared her own story. About her husband who died young, leaving her with 3 children to raise alone. About the stranger in a grocery store 30 years ago who'd paid for her cart when her check bounced. About how that single act of kindness had saved her from giving up entirely. "That woman told me the same thing I'm telling you," Margaret said as they stood by Rachel's car. "Pass it on. When you can, help someone else. That's how grace multiplies in this world." Rachel drove home with the insulin safe beside her and something else she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope, not the desperate. Grasping kind, but the steady, warm certainty that goodness still existed, that people still cared, that she wasn't alone in her struggle. Emma was waiting on the couch when Rachel walked in, pale and tired. "Did you get it, Mommy?" "I got it, baby." Rachel knelt beside her daughter, preparing the injection with practiced efficiency. As the medicine went in, she thought about Margaret, about kindness from strangers, about how one moment of compassion could ripple out in ways impossible to measure. That night after Emma was asleep, her blood sugar stabilized. Rachel sat at her kitchen table and cried. But these were different tears than the ones she'd shed at the pharmacy. These were tears of gratitude, of relief, of something almost like redemption. 6 months later, Rachel stood in line at a different store. She'd been promoted at work, was finally getting regular child support, and Emma's health had stabilized. Life wasn't perfect, but it was manageable. As she waited to pay for groceries, she watched the young man in front of her, his card declining again and again, his face flushed with embarrassment. Rachel didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, her own card already in her hand, remembering a silver-haired woman and a pharmacy and a moment that had changed everything. "Try mine," she said softly, and saw the disbelief and gratitude flood the young man's eyes. As the transaction processed, Rachel thought about Margaret, wondered if she knew what she'd started, how her act of kindness had planted a seed that was now growing in Rachel's heart. Because that's the truth about compassion. It's not just a one-time transaction. It's a promise, a commitment to see each other's humanity, to recognize that we're all one bad day away from being the person at the register with the declined card. And when we choose kindness in those moments, we're not just helping one person. We're changing the world, one small act of grace at a time. That's what Margaret had taught her. That's what Rachel would spend the rest of her life remembering and repeating. Kindness is never wasted, grace always multiplies, and sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply say, "Try mine."